Hi, and thank you for joining us for our first public presentation for the Bracebridge Downtown Master Plan. My name is Trish Clark, and I'm a licensed landscape architect from Brooke McElroy, as well as the project manager for the project. I'm joined today by my colleagues Danny Roy, Katie Black, and Cal Brooke, and I'll let them introduce themselves, starting with Katie.
Hi there, my name's Katie. I'm an urban designer and landscape architect as well as an associate at Brooke McElroy. And I've really been enjoying working with the Town of Bracebridge on this great, exciting project.
Great, thanks. And Danny?
Hi there, my name is Danny Roy. I'm an intern architect and planner with Brooke McElroy, also part of the Indigenous Design Studio. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Danny. And finally, Cal.
Hi there, my name is Cal Brooke. I'm an architect and a planner and really excited about the future for downtown Bracebridge. And as we kind of get close to concluding our work on the study, we're really looking forward to getting your comments. And with that, I will let Trish and Danny present our work to date. Thank you.
So our goal for this project is to develop a master plan that's going to enhance Bracebridge's downtown and overall the connection to the waterfront. And we want to make sure that the public is able to share information and ideas so we can build a common perception of the downtown today and what that shared vision will look like for the future. So for today's agenda and for today's meeting, we're going to give a project overview and describe the general objectives for our master plan. We're going to provide some feedback that we've received to date through the public survey, the project website, and stakeholder interviews. We're also going to provide you with high-level overview of the background research and analysis we've done within the downtown. And finally, we're going to present the concepts that we've developed for the opportunity sites. Following this presentation, we're going to post a recording of the presentation as well as the slide deck to the project website. And that way you're able to view the presentation on your own time and review the concepts in more detail. And we're hoping that you'll take part in our public survey and give us your feedback and comments on everything you've viewed today. It's important for us to mention that these concepts are not set in stone. We're providing multiple concepts for many opportunity sites, and we're looking to see which you like best, elements you like and don't like, so we can develop a preferred plan that will be developed into the downtown master plan. So with that, I'm just going to mention quickly that the project is broken out into three major phases. The first is background envisioning, the second, vision and concept plan, and the third, the preferred plan and the final report. The purpose of phase one was to compile all the relevant background information, reviewing the existing conditions, opportunities and challenges with the sites, and working with stakeholders and the public to gain an understanding of the downtown. We're currently in phase two, where we're developing concept plans and options for the downtown and each of the 8 opportunity sites. The third and final phase will have a developed implementation plan, which will have cost estimates, high priority projects, phasing, and the approach to future development in the downtown. And this report will contain all our concepts and the feedback we've received that will then be shared with council. We've reached 3 major milestones in the project to date. The first is we've hosted multiple consultation methods through stakeholder interviews and the public survey, as well as hosting information on our project website. We've researched and analyzed background documents for each of the opportunity sites. And we've compiled the feedback received, reviewed the best practices and our research, and we've developed concepts that we're here to present to you today for each of the sites. The sites that we're reviewing as part of the master plan include the Carnegie Library and the adjacent post office, Memorial Arena, Memorial Park, Manitoba Street, Woodchester Villa, Bracebridge Bay Park, and the Timber Mart or Rona lands. We've engaged with the community in 5 different ways. The first is we've created a project website on the Engage Bracebridge platform. And this is where we host a public forum as well as our first public survey. We've spoken with local business owners, downtown residents, councillors, members of staff, and we're having ongoing discussions with the Indigenous groups in the area, as well as youth on the design direction and feedback for the sites. Our website has generated a lot of traction to date. As you can see, over 1,400 visitors from May to August. Many people have participated in our forum discussions and our public survey, but this site also hosts more project work to come, which will include the concepts presented, our second public survey, and eventually the draft of the downtown master plan. As you can see, we had a lot of people respond to our first public survey, over 200 people. We were really interested to see who those people were and if they were permanent residents of Muskoka or if they were tourists and seasonal residents. We were also interested to see why people were visiting the downtown, and some of those common responses included shopping, dining, using local services, or attending events. We also want to know how the downtown could be improved and what strengths we should play on. And some of these included better access and safe access to the water, creating a pedestrian-friendly environment, and promoting and enhancing the natural landscape and physical context of Muskoka. In addition to the public survey, we reached out to over 25 stakeholders, and these were members of the public and business owners, BIA representatives, councillors, and the mayor. And we wanted to know who had a vested interest in the downtown and how councillors could support and take part in bettering the downtown and for local businesses and how they can succeed.
So as Trish mentioned a few slides earlier, we are interested in working with local Indigenous groups on finding ways to incorporate Indigenous presence within Bracebridge. So we think this project has a great opportunity to engage with Indigenous stakeholders in the process and to potentially restore some Indigenous presence through placemaking or placekeeping. So the projects you see on the bottom are just a few examples of work that we've done with communities and organizations. So we've been having some work with Tina Kilbourne along with the Muskoka Area Indigenous Leadership Table. So this next slide here just looks at potential sites in the downtown area where Indigenous placemaking projects, installations, public art, or signage could be incorporated. So these are opportunities we hope to discuss with Indigenous representatives through, as I stated before, the Muskoka Area Indigenous Leadership Table. So the 4 sites would include Memorial Park, the Timber Mart Lands, Bird Mills Mews, and Woodchester Park. So in addition to speaking with members of the public and staff, we've also looked at downtown from a physical standpoint. So we've done some site visits. So we've also looked at existing documents and policies and plans. So we've done this to have a better understanding of the existing surrounding context of Bracebridge, and also to better understand the history along with the bylaws and the policies that are in place, some of which include the official plan, the Parks, Recreation and Trails Master Plan, the Active Transportation and Community Improvement Plan. So we want to ensure concepts we developed align with the feedback we've received and within the existing framework and guidelines that the town has in place. So we just want to show you a few reference and context maps of the downtown area. So starting with the boundary of the study area of the downtown master plan. So this includes Manitoba Street as a spine, with the northern boundary being Monk Road, the eastern boundary being Hiram Street, western boundary being McMurray Street, and the south boundary being Queen Street. We've also done a few analysis maps to give you a sense of the types of information we've been using to help develop our concepts. So given Manitoba Street is such a prominent street within the town and downtown, we want to understand the existing traffic flows and patterns. We've often hear different opinions about parking. Sometimes we hear it's not enough. So we want to calculate existing parking stalls and locate these lots in proximity to the opportunity sites we've identified. Bracebridge is located along the Muskoka River, and it's important the residents are able to safely access the water. We want to understand the interaction with the water's edge and how these points can be improved and enhanced. Same applies for green space. Through the pandemic, we've all appreciated the time we spent outdoors with friends and family. So it's important to analyze the existing public space and how we can improve its surrounding network. And finally, we want to highlight the walkability of the downtown Bracebridge. So the topography is a challenge, we do recognize that, but the walking distances between major points of interest, existing parking lots, and the opportunity sites was an important factor in our design developments. So in this particular map, you see a variety of orange circles there. So that represents a 400-meter walking distance, which is roughly representative of 5-minute walking time.
So after analyzing the physical context and the background documents and the feedback we've received, we've come up with 5 preliminary concept guidelines. And these are things that we feel that each of our recommendations should be supported in the master plan. So the 5 guidelines include increase access to the waterfront, integrate aspects of sustainability, culture, and community into the downtown fabric, creating a transparent design and consultation process that ensures the downtown master plan embodies the community's vision and represents the highest and best use of urban assets. Strengthen the downtown's potential to provide a sustainable economic development and continued prosperity for its residents. And finally, retain existing residents and attract new residents and young people, including young families. So with that, we've come up with concepts for 8 of the opportunity sites, which include Manitoba Street, Carnegie Library, Memorial Arena, a youth park, Timber Mart Lands, Memorial Park, Bracebridge Bay Park, and Woodchester Villa. And so after we present these concepts, we're hoping to gain insight from you and feedback from you on how we can develop all these concepts into a preferred plan for each of the sites. So our first opportunity site is, as Danny mentioned, the spine of downtown, which is Manitoba Street. And we've broken it out into 2 sections. We're calling it upper and lower, or north and south of Taylor Road. Obviously, north and south of Taylor Road have different characters. However, the feedback we received showed very similar ideas and outcomes and feedback for what people would like to see for Manitoba Street. And this included generally a safer street, so pedestrian crossing, wider sidewalks, and better accessibility, spaces for patio and retail expansions, and just understanding the traffic corridor and really prioritizing pedestrian safety over the rushing of trucks and large vehicles. So north of Taylor Road, the user experience is fairly uncomfortable. As you can see from this image here, the sidewalk itself is quite narrow, maybe about 1 meter wide. And there is unit paving that's sloped or uneven. This doesn't make a comfortable walking experience. 2 people cannot safely pass, or it's a challenge for people with mobility aids or strollers. So our primary recommendation here is to provide ample pedestrian clearway without sacrificing or compromising the safety and accessibility of the street. So we've rendered a cross-section here of what North Manitoba Street could look like. And this would include removing the unit pavers that are there now and increasing the sidewalk to be 3 meters of concrete. We would also have a flex parking area, which, depending on which store faces that parking spot, could be used as extended retail or a patio space. And we're also looking at using consistent streetscape materials. And this could include various furnishings like trash bins, benches, light fixtures, bike parking, to really create a sense of community throughout all of downtown. South Manitoba Street has a different feel and a different character. And similar to these images here, it's characterized by historical buildings and a true sense of place. If you've been to Picton, Niagara, or Collingwood, you might have a general sense of the same type of feel that you get in those places. Manitoba Street is a great main street. It really encourages people to walk around and come visit town when they're around. And we want to make sure that this is a destination, especially in the summer months with seasonal and tourists coming into town. And we've come up with a few creative options, low-cost transformations that don't require a large construction budget and things that we can test through pilot projects before investing as a permanent configuration. So some of the feedback we've received to enhance South Manitoba Street is increasing the pedestrian zones, allowing expanded patios and retail space, and incorporating additional vegetation and greenery on the street. For this section of Manitoba Street, we've come up with 3 different concepts. And as I mentioned, they can all be tested without investing too much into the redevelopment or construction of the street. The main determining factor in how Manitoba Street gets reconfigured is based on the road and parking requirements and desires from the community. Much of the feedback we've received has to do with non-vehicular enhancements, which is extended retail or patios or just extra walking space and viewing space. So things that we've looked at are elevated tree planters, flexible parking areas, and perhaps even no parking areas. Here's an example of what those planters may look like: elevated concrete walks with perhaps additional seating and enhanced greenery. We're also looking at a palette of streetscape materials. And as I mentioned, for North Manitoba Street, we want to create this sense of uniformity and community for all of downtown Bracebridge's furnishings. And they can include trash bins, benches, historical signage, lighting. We want to unify the brand for Bracebridge. We're also looking at ways to create a vibrant downtown, and an inexpensive way to do this is through street painting and a form of public art. And it's a way we can engage with the local artists and youth in the area and really create a lively pedestrian destination. And this could even be done as an annual public art event to kind of kick off summer in Bracebridge. So the winter conditions for South Manitoba Street are the same through all options that we're proposing. You can see here that there's parking on both sides of the street, and it's a 2-way street, but we've widened the sidewalks to be about 4 meters of concrete. We're also going to have consistent street furnishings and vegetation throughout the site. This is our first of 3 concepts for South Manitoba Street, and we're proposing 2-way traffic. So as you can see here, there's a 4-meter space for outdoor dining and retail directly adjacent to the buildings. And then there's a 2.5-meter pedestrian walkway. And this 2.5 pedestrian meter walkway is the same 2.5 from the parking in the winter conditions. So in the winter months, retail won't be on the concrete sidewalk, and that's where pedestrians will walk. And this painted area, which is the 2.5 meters, would be where people would be parking in the winter months. For this option in the summer, there's no parking on Manitoba Street, but we would include spaces for delivery and accessible parking. You can also see we've included sharrows for the cycling along Manitoba. Though there's not enough space to have a dedicated cycling lane, we wanted to ensure that cycling was incorporated in the plan and to bring awareness of cycling in the downtown. All 3 of our options bode very well for street closures for events as well. Here is what it might look like if there's an accessible parking, and what it would look like for a delivery or a loading zone. Our second option is a 1-way concept. So very similar to the previous example, we would have 4 meters of an increased outdoor dining and retail space, as well as a 2.5-meter pedestrian walkway. However, we've modified the 2 lanes of traffic to be 1 lane of traffic with 1 lane of parking. This is where we would have, again, that increased feeling of pedestrians first, creating outdoor dining, seating, landscaping, and retail zones. We would ensure that there's delivery and accessible parking, as well as regular parking provided all along Manitoba Street. And again, you would be able to close off the street for different festivals or events. Our third and final concept is a full closure of Manitoba Street between Taylor Road and Ontario. And this would again happen only in the summer months, but you would have no through traffic or parking in that area. And this really creates the sense of a pedestrian mall, pedestrians first, and the opportunity for people to take over the street. You'd have ample space for outdoor dining and retail, and it really becomes a destination for downtown Bracebridge. Of course, something to consider for this would be how traffic would be rerouted. So this map highlights what the one-way traffic option would look like. Coming north on Manitoba would be the direction, and you would reroute traffic along Dominion Street and Ontario Drive. However, if we're proposing a full closure, we would need to look at a larger context plan to ensure that the trucks are being rerouted safely around downtown and not traveling through residential areas in this zone. So if a full closure plan is the preferred option, we would be working with the District of Muskoka and the Town of Bracebridge prior to including it in the master plan to ensure that the traffic routes are considered with this plan. And finally, we want to ensure that there's safe crossing points along Manitoba Street. So we're proposing bump outs. And these bump outs would really encourage safe crossing, but it would also encourage drivers to slow down. And with the planting, it would also have the added benefit of providing stormwater management. Our next opportunity site is the Carnegie Library, and it's a beautiful, cherished historical building right downtown on Manitoba Street. However, there is a multiplex project being built, and the library will be relocating to that site. And there's hopes of that happening in the next few years. So we were tasked with looking at how this building could be repurposed, as it's clearly a very beautiful building and prominent on the downtown strip. So some of the ideas that we've heard from consultation about the library include turning it into a community building or a hub, making it a green space expanded into the parking lot, having a space for artists, galleries, or a museum, perhaps even the Bracebridge Archives, hosting classes, workshops, or a co-working space, government offices or public meeting rooms, or having a mixed-use building with retail in the lower levels and residences or offices above, and that would be at the post office at the adjacent site. So the Carnegie building, this is a beautiful historical building, and to tear it down would be such a shame. So we really looked at how it could be repurposed and keep that old character of the building. So some things we talked about were an art center where you could have adult classes, workshops, meeting rooms, creating a hub for artists in the area. You could also have a restaurant or a cafe, a retail outlet, or it could house a museum and historical archives of Bracebridge. The future of the post office building has not been determined, so we looked at a few options of what that building might be given its proximity to the Carnegie building. The first scenario would be the building is retained and repurposed, and it could be used for offices or government officials. And the second option would be to demolish the building and replace it with an interim green space, and then redeveloped into a new mixed-use building downtown. This, as I mentioned, would have retail on the ground floor and perhaps residential or commercial above. However, any redevelopment that we would propose for this site would include additional public space. So that would have perhaps a little terrace or deep sidewalks for additional seating and vegetation. If the post office building is to be removed, we see a space where the Carnegie building could be expanded. So perhaps that's an outdoor patio space if it's retail, or restaurant or a cafe, or a green space for retail. And there's really, having the backdrop of the Carnegie building adjacent really provides a nice space for a public setting, as you can see here, for additional seating. If the post office is to be removed, this is something on what that interim green space might look like. We obviously don't want to put anything too permanent if we know a new building would be going in. So we would have places for people to sit and enjoy the downtown. For the next phase of development, we would have a mixed-use building. So this would have, you can see on the right-hand side what that setback would look like, about 4 stories. And on the left is about a 5-meter setback, which is showing the additional terrace space for public use.
So next up, we'll talk about the Memorial Arena. So the building has reached the end of its life cycle and has therefore is available for redevelopment in the near future. Some of the ideas that we've heard through this process for the site's future include more affordable housing, commercial development that can include mixed-use buildings. So that would be commercial buildings on the ground floor with residential on the units or the floors above. Along with incorporating a youth space, such as skating rink, pump track, basketball, and track loop. Or there's more potential for green spaces, parklands, along with additional parking. So we've heard clearly that there's a need for more affordable housing in the downtown. So as a town-owned site, these lands can be made available to developers who would provide a range of new housing opportunities. In a review of housing scenarios, we looked at providing a range of housing types on the site, with some units suitable for families and others for smaller households or individuals. So we've come up with some options here to consider. So in this scenario, the site where the arena sits today has the capacity to provide in the range of about 60 units using a development strategy that we figured was economically feasible. Also note, in this particular scenario, the lands to the right are also town-owned and are currently occupied by the skateboard park. So we've decided to expand on the skateboard park and include additional youth activities, such as additional basketball courts or a multi-sport court. In this scenario, we tested an option where if the skateboard park were to be located to a larger youth park complex, it just provides additional opportunity for more housing. So in this redevelopment of the larger site, it could yield at a minimum in the range of about 70 units with a wide variety of housing types. So this would include 7 freehold townhomes with a rear garage, which would be 3 stories, 12 freehold townhomes, 3 stories, so that's located along the southern edge there of the boundary there, and a 50-unit apartment building, 4 stories, that's showcased on the northern edge there. So these are just a few precedent images that convey the other potential uses for the site, including a mixed-use building or a full commercial development, such as an office building, which you see on the right-hand side there. Next up, let's talk about the youth park. So with the uncertainty of the skate park in the downtown and the ongoing conversations regarding a pump track, we would like to further investigate the opportunity for a youth park. The local high school is nearby, and with major changes proposed in the downtown, we feel it's important to ensure all ages are included in the downtown master plan. So we want to include a space that is safe and accessible for all ages. That would include a skate park, pump track, playground, and gathering spaces. So a location has not been proposed within the downtown boundary as of yet, and we have been in discussions with the local schools and youth, so lots of great ideas that came out of that. So we are just in the process of determining the types of engagement and activities they would like to see in these types of spaces. So we feel it's important to have a park within walking distance to their schools, homes, and the downtown community. Here are just a few precedent photos that we feel would be welcomed by the Bracebridge youth. So this includes a new skate park, pump track, public art on the ground, like Trish had mentioned before, a natural rope playground. So just these ideas or activities that would just help to create a safe, inclusive park.
So our next site is the Mart lands, and this is a really exciting opportunity for downtown, as it's a large parcel right along the water's edge. And it can really draw visitors from Bracebridge and from the Muskoka region. The riverfront setting for public use is a huge asset for the town, and it will really create a destination for downtown Bracebridge. By far, we've received the most feedback about this site. Some of the feedback that we've received include naming the parklands, and we can highlight Bracebridge's waterfront setting. repurposing the existing buildings, which would include the old brick mill building on site, as well as the Rona building, looping trails for walking and cycling, and perhaps a riverfront boardwalk, ways to safely engage with the water. And as we're at the top of the falls in this location, we do want to discourage anyone from accessing the water at this point. However, we want to find ways for people to interact safely with the water. We also looked at ecological concerns and in order to design the park safely from flood. Perhaps moving the farmer's market into a Rona building, indoor and outdoor opportunities, a new space for the visitor center, focusing on family activities, so play zone, maybe winter skating, a splash pad, creating a flexible space and capable of accommodating festivals and events happening within the downtown, and maybe even a brew pub or a restaurant with views of the water. So here are some images of what it might look like on how we can engage with the water without entering the water. So that may include boardwalks, additional seating, lookouts, and interpretive signage. We can also engage through using water without using the river itself. So this would be through an ice rink or a splash pad. In the winter months, we could have a skating loop or a skating pad, similar to the image shown here. Or we could have an interactive water play as shown on the right-hand side. And the great thing about this site is we want to create a year-round draw, and these two elements would really ensure that there's activity going on in the site for all 4 seasons. We also looked at outdoor fire pits and public art to ensure that we're creating a lively environment, both in all seasons, but also at night and during the daytime. We want to extend public use as much as possible on this site. We looked at what it might look like to repurpose the Rona building and, if possible, the old brick mill building on site. Ways that we could have a cafe or a restaurant on site, a market building, and what those buildings might look like for the park as a whole. There's a lot of interests here and what these buildings might be able to accomplish. For example, the Rona building can be repurposed to a large multi-purpose building, and we looked at something like a permanent home for the farmer's market. So we would have indoor and outdoor space for vendors. So on the left, that is the existing Rona building. However, on the right, this is St. Jacob's Market. As you can see, some similarities. And we could add a wraparound porch for some outdoor stalls and additional seating and views of the river. On the left is what the indoor market hall might look like. And on the right, what it would look like if we spilled out into a parking stall and had outdoor stalls. As shown here, this is the existing brick mill building on site, and you can see there's a lot of rich character to the building. However, the viability of repurposing this building is currently unknown. We haven't done any extensive structural review of this building, and it would be a major investment to reconstruct and ensure that this was safe and brought up to the standard codes for a restaurant or a brew pub. However, it is beautiful, and we want to determine if this is an option that people would like to see in our concepts as we move forward. At a different level, we looked at what a park pavilion might look like, and these are relatively low-cost alternative. However, it would still create a sense of place on site, and it would support any splash pad or skating rink that may be proposed, as well as providing outdoor seating, pop-up space for food trucks or movie nights. So we've come up with 3 concepts for the Timber Mart lands. And there are 2 major design challenges that I want to mention before we get into them. The first is ensuring that we have proper setback from the rail lines. As you can see, the rail lines run on the west side of the site. We want to ensure that there's no vibration or issues with the trains passing through. The second is ensuring that we have sufficient distancing from the floodplain. As I'm sure you're aware, this site does flood often in the springtime, and on each of the concepts, you'll see a blue dash line of where that flood zone typically ends. And that was a large consideration on how we were going to program this site. So the first option that we're presenting to you here is a riverfront park with a wading pool, an interactive water play, and a skating rink on site. The Rona building would be repurposed to have a market hall, a restaurant, and a visitor center. And all through the site, there would be looping trails, as well as some picnic docks that extend into the water and passive green spaces. In this scenario, we've removed the brick mill building, and we're proposing a new building that would accommodate washrooms, change rooms, any of the mechanical features that would be required for the splash pad and skating rink. We've also provided ample parking that would support both the park and any market uses for that building. The second concept has very much of the same programming elements. The major change would be retaining the brick mill building on site. And this building could be used as a restaurant and a brew pub, and the Rona building would house the washrooms, change rooms, and all the mechanical equipment for the skate and splash pad. Similar to the last option, we would have picnic docks and looping trails and ample parking. The third and final option is where no splash or skating rink is to be proposed, and it could be located at a different park, such as Memorial Park. We would continue to have the market hall and the visitor center in the Rona building, and we are proposing a brew pub or a restaurant in the brick mill building. We're also proposing an outdoor pavilion, and this would have some type of structure, and it would house smaller events or community events. So perhaps concerts or movie nights, food trucks, festivals, and events.
Next up, let's talk about Memorial Park. So Memorial Park was not previously identified as an opportunity site. However, after working through the Mart designs and reviewing the park's recreation and trails master plan, we felt it was important to ensure there were no conflicting designs or concepts in our recommendations. So depending on the preferred design option for the Mart lands or the Mart design, the concept for Memorial Park will differ. As such, we are proposing two concepts for this park. In our first concept, it is very similar to the existing design with the inclusion of a playground, a washroom facility, and bike infrastructure. The existing band shell will remain. However, we have proposed an increased plaza space adjacent to the band shell to accommodate concerts or events that could be hosted at the park. So this concept would be proposed if a splash pad and skating rink were to be developed at the Mart lands. And it's also important to note in our two concepts that the fountain and the pavilion, or sorry, the war memorial and band shell will remain. In the second concept, we would propose if there was no splash pad and skating rink proposed at the Mart lands. So this concept is similar to the ideas put forth in the Parks, Recreation and Trails Master Plan. So this includes a splash pad and change room facility and washroom facility. In this option, the natural ice skating rink would remain, but be realigned. Here's how the second option would look during the winter. So here you can see what the rink might look like. So the rink would be larger than the existing trail. The building would accommodate skate change and washroom facilities.
Next up is Bracebridge Bay Park. And a lot of people in the feedback we've received felt that this space wasn't designed, and it really very much felt like leftover space. And so some of the key things that we tried to integrate into our plans, and based on the feedback we received, is to have a better connection to the water's edge, whether that through beach or docking. We really wanted to look at how we could access the water safely at the bottom of the falls. So some of the things we heard were to increase the size of the beach area, have day use facilities, so washrooms and change rooms, a space for food trucks to park, safely access the water, and to have ample seating during the events that happen along the water here. So our concept highlights a lot of the feedback we've received, but it also looks at the existing designs that were put forth in the Parks, Recreation and Trails Master Plan. So on the bottom left, we've increased the size of the beach area while balancing the areas for vegetation to act as a natural buffer and reduce shoreline erosion. We've added a looping trail as referenced in the active transportation master plan. We've added swim docks or picnic docks. We have realigned the parking area to allow for step decking towards the water. We've added a washroom and change room facility. We've also added day boat docking and increased the size of the break wall to protect against the adjacent falls. We're also promoting a floating swim deck opposite on the other side of the bay at Kelvin Grove Park. And this would have a safe place for people to swim and also calm the waters in that square there. There's been a lot of tragedies within the bay here. We want to ensure that we're promoting a safe swim environment. So here are a few images of what our concept might look like. We would have wood deck seating along the water that could be illuminated nicely with some lighting at night. The parking area would allow for food trucks and local vendors. And we want to ensure that there was ample seating and washrooms close by. We've also included a couple images of what that floating swim deck might look like, as shown here in the Paris Canal Pool and the Copenhagen Harbor Pool.
And finally, let's take a look at one last concept, which is the Woodchester Villa. So the Woodchester Villa is a beautiful heritage building and site adjacent to the Chapel Hill Gallery. So despite its character and remarkable location, it's relatively unknown to many residents and visitors just because of its limited programming and its visibility in the community. So some of the comments that we've received include many feel it's a see it once building because of its lack of programming. Cannot see it from the road or water, so again, unknown to the community. And poor venue and event space because of the lack of accessible washrooms and parking. So there's opportunities for enhanced trail linkages, enhancing the programming between the Villa and Chapel Gallery, along with enhancing the connection from the Timber Mart lands waterfront to the Villa, just providing more reasons for people to go there. So we believe with the redevelopment of the Timber Mart lands, which is across the river from the Woodchester site, there's an opportunity to revitalize the site's role as a public destination. The concept for our revitalized Woodchester Villa site includes the creation of a storybook trail for families with young children, starting at the Timber Mart lands, and will wind through the site's forested setting, leading ultimately to the villa itself. So we feel because of the forest has this certain fairy tale quality to its design, this would lend well. The forested park setting could also expand the theme of the Chapel Gallery through public art installations as an outdoor sculpture forest that would be scattered throughout the site. Programming for the villa could incorporate a tea house. So with select tree and branch removal within the view corridor between the Timber Mart site and the Woodchester Villa. So we feel this would create opportunities for visual sightlines to make visual connections, along with improving night lighting of the villa to draw in more visitors. So making the viability of a tea house is possible if we make these suggestions. So building on the connection between the two public sites, a viewing deck to the Timber Mart lands can also be a destination along the storybook and sculpture forest trail system. So further investigation is required to identify areas for additional parking that can be provided. So this is key towards the viability of the tea house concept. Here are just a few images here on the left. You see the potential for opening up views to the Timber Mart lands. The central image there is just the precedent image showing what kind of signage or storybooks that could be incorporated throughout the trail system, along with having these beautiful sculptures that could be scattered throughout the site. A few more images. On the left, you see what a viewing platform could look like. So elevating the view towards the river and also towards the Timber Mart lands. And here you can see what a Woodchester Villa tea house could look like.
So those are our 8 opportunity sites. And as you can see, there's many opportunities within the downtown and many exciting projects that could be going on in the future of the downtown. And obviously we're very excited to show you these concepts, but we're equally as excited to hear all the feedback and comments that we'll be receiving from you. We're really interested in how we can retain residents, but also attract young people and families and create a really exciting destination for Bracebridge. We can really draw people from all over the province and make this the destination space to visit on a weekend or for a summer, or perhaps even to move permanently. We want to create better opportunities and enhance prosperity for the downtown businesses. And looking at all these 8 opportunity sites, you can see really that there is a lot of potential for the downtown and many small things that can be done to really enhance the community feel and sense of place for downtown Bracebridge. So this concludes our concept presentation for you today. And as I mentioned, this presentation will be posted on our project website, giving you the opportunity to give us feedback and comments. We're going to do that through a public survey or through public forum discussions, where you can post comments that you have or any feedback you like or dislike about any of the concepts presented. We're going to continue our work with the Indigenous and youth groups and gain additional feedback and design direction from those groups. Once we've received all of the feedback on the concepts, we're going to start developing the preferred plan that will be going into the downtown Bracebridge master plan. If you want to reach out to any of the project team directly, email addresses are posted for the project team on the project website. So you'll see our names and email addresses on the right-hand side. We very much look forward to receiving all of your feedback and comments that will really better the downtown for the community and how we can improve on the existing and wonderful things going on in the downtown. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, and we very much look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Take care.